Canada's inflation rate held steady last month, and Statistics Canada says it came in at 6.9%, which is where it was in September. But gas prices went up, food prices did too. And staying with the affordability theme, your rent may have gone up as well. For example, look at this. On Prince Edward Island, the year-over-year increase is 70%. In Canada's biggest province of Ontario, it's up 17%. In Saskatchewan, the increase, 9%. And then if we go over to British Columbia, it's coming. There we go. There's Saskatchewan. Let's wait for British Columbia. Rent has gone up 16%. There we go. Now, to help us explain why rental prices are on the rise despite a cooling housing market, we've reached Professor Murtaza Haider. He's a professor of real estate management and research at the Toronto Metropolitan University. He also is a research director for the school's Urban Analytics Institute and joins us from Mississauga. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So we were just explaining there, the housing market is cooling, but the cost of rent continues to go up. Can you explain that for us?
Absolutely. So when the housing market cools down, what happens is that people postpone their decision to buy a house. They want the prices to stabilize. What it means is the people who would have moved out of rental into ownership are now taking more time to rent. So they increase their tenure as renters, which means that it constrains the supply of rental housing. And therefore, you have more people competing for rental space because the cooling of housing market has kept people longer in rental tenure. So that is the reason why competition has increased. The supply has been constrained because people are not moving from rental to owner.
Okay, very valid. Do you think in Canada we've reached a housing affordability crisis right across this country?
I think we are in a housing affordability crisis, but it's nothing new. We have been in this predicament for the last many decades. If you look at the older archives, you would see that newspapers were complaining about housing affordability as early as 60s and 70s. What has happened now is that we have these conditions more acute. Housing challenges, housing prices are have increased much higher than people's incomes, and rents have started to increase more so in the last 6 to 8 months. So yes, we are in a housing crisis, and it's slightly worse, if not much worse, than what we have experienced in the past.
Now, I think in most provinces, there are caps on how much landlords can raise the rent. Is that working?
It usually doesn't work in the long run. So when you have rent freezes or caps on rents, what it means is that it discourages new construction of rental housing, and it discourages landlords from making their surplus space available for rent. So what happens is that in the long run, when you have freezes on rents, the quality of rental housing stock depreciates or declines because landlords are not motivated to keep the housing in a state of good repair. And more importantly, the rate at which new housing or rental housing is constructed, that declines. The supply of rental housing in Canada, which we call the purpose-built rental housing, has been declining since the early 70s. There has been a recent resurgence in some parts of the country, especially Montreal, but this is not seen in other places like Ontario. And what it means is that you have less than demand supply, less than what is demanded for rental housing. So that constrained supply also fuels the increase in rents or the rate at which rent increases. So what we really need to do is to think about the effect these rent caps have on the supply of new rental housing.
Okay, that's an interesting way to look at it. What does the rental market actually need right now to become more affordable? Supply?
More supply. We need to find ways to not only construct new purpose-built rental housing that not only guarantees affordable rents or relatively lower rents, but it also helps with the security of tenure, because in purpose-built rental, a renter can stay in that space for much longer than if you were to rent a space from private landlord who may ask you to vacate the property as they need it later. So we need to have a significant, meaningful increase in affordable purpose-built rental housing. And we also need to make changes so that in the short run, we can encourage existing landlords or homeowners that if they have excess surplus space like a basement, we should facilitate it. We should come up with ways and means that individuals, homeowners could be convinced to make their surplus space available for rental.
I'm going to ask you to look into the future a little bit. Will we see the rental prices cooling off anytime soon?
Not anytime soon. I think as long as this condition remains where mortgage rates are higher, what it means is that mortgage rates are higher, so mortgage payments are higher. So private landlords who have these investment properties, they would continue to raise rents so that they are able to meet the mortgage payments. So in the short run, maybe 6 months to a year, I don't see rents to be easing. They will continue to increase but that increase may slow down by sometimes mid next year. So in the short run, you should expect pressure on rents.
And just finally, advice for someone in the rental market.
Well, the advice would be you may want to find a slightly affordable rental along the transit lines, maybe outer. So if you are in a big city, maybe look for suburbs that are serviced by regional rail service. And usually within those proximity of the regional rail where you can hop onto the train and be in downtown in 35 minutes to 40 minutes. So those sort of satellite communities may be a better place to find affordable rental stock.
Okay, some good advice there. Murtaza Haider, thank you for your insights. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.